Captain Haiyan Wu pressed his face against the cold metal window of the spaceship bridge. His eyes went wide as he stared at the planet below them. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his 30 years of space travel. The world spun slowly beneath their ship, showing colors that seemed too bright to be real blue. Oceans covered most of the surface, but they were not the dark blue of Earth. Instead, they glowed with a soft light that made them look like liquid jewels. Green forests stretched across the continents, but these trees were different too. They seemed to shine with their own inner light, making the whole planet look like a giant lamp floating in the darkness of space. Haiyan Wu had been captain of the Korean Dawn for 5 years now. He had taken his crew to dozens of worlds looking for a new home for humanity. Most of the planets they found were too hot or too cold. Some had poisonous air, others had dangerous animals or deadly storms, but this planet looked perfect. It looked like paradise. Commander Yunji stood beside him at the window. She was the smartest person on the ship and had studied alien worlds for most of her life. Her job was to make sure any planet they found would be safe for humans to live on. She held a small computer in her hands and kept looking at the numbers on its screen. "The atmosphere is perfect, Captain," she said. Her voice was excited but also confused. "I have never seen readings like this. The air has exactly the right amount of oxygen for humans to breathe. The temperature is warm, but not too hot. The gravity is almost exactly like Earth. It is like someone made this planet just for us." Haiyan Wu nodded, but he felt worried. Perfect planets did not exist in nature. There was always something wrong with them. They were too far from their sun or too close. Their air was wrong, or their water was dirty, or their weather was too dangerous. But this planet seemed to have no problems at all. Young engineer Jinho was sitting at his control station near the back of the bridge. He was only 25 years old, but he was very good with machines. His job was to keep the ship running and to study any technology they might find on alien worlds. He was looking at his own set of readings, and his face showed pure amazement. "Captain, the energy readings from the planet are incredible," he called out. "There are power sources down there that are stronger than anything we have ever seen, but they are not dangerous. They seem to be running some kind of climate control system. The whole planet is being maintained by advanced technology." Dr. Sunya was the oldest member of the crew at 52 years old. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but she was also the most careful person on the ship. Her job was to study alien life forms and make sure they were safe for humans to be around. She had seen, too, many beautiful planets that turned out to be deadly traps. She was looking through the ship's powerful telescope at the planet's surface. What she saw made her feel both excited and worried. There were buildings down there, lots of them. They were made of some kind of crystal material that seemed to glow with soft light. The buildings were beautiful, but they looked empty. No lights in the windows, no movement in the streets. "There is definitely intelligent life on this planet," she announced to the crew, "but I am not seeing any current activity. The buildings look abandoned. It is like whoever built them just disappeared." One day, Security Officer Taemin was a former soldier who had joined the crew to protect them from any dangers they might encounter. He was tall and strong, with scars on his hands from old battles. He did not trust anything that seemed too good to be true. "Captain," he said in his serious voice, "this feels like a trap. Why would we find a perfect planet with no one living on it? Where did the previous inhabitants go? And why did they leave behind all this advanced technology?" Communication specialist Neri was the youngest member of the crew at only 23 years old. She had bright eyes and was always curious about everything. Her job was to listen for alien radio signals and to try to communicate with any intelligent life they might find. "I have been scanning all frequencies," she reported, "but I am not picking up any communication signals from the planet. However, the technology down there is definitely active. I can detect some kind of computer network running throughout the entire world. It is like the planet itself is one giant machine." Haiyan Wu looked at each member of his crew. These 5 people had become like family to him. Over the years they had traveled millions of miles together and had faced many dangers. They trusted him to make the right decisions and keep them safe, but this decision was harder than any he had made before. The planet below them could be the answer to humanity's problems. Earth was becoming too crowded, and the government had sent out many ships to find new worlds for people to live on. Most of those ships had returned with nothing to show for their long journeys. If this planet was really as perfect as it seemed, then the Korean Dawn would be the first ship to find a true new home for humanity. They would be heroes, their names would be remembered forever, but if it was a trap, then they might all die far from home. The ship's main computer began to beep with incoming data. Yunji checked the readings and her face showed even more confusion. Captain, the computer has finished analyzing the planet's surface. The soil is perfect for growing earth crops. The water is cleaner than anything we have on our homeworld. The weather patterns are completely stable. There are no storms, no earthquakes. No volcanic activity. Jinho added more information from his station. The buildings down there are using a technology I have never seen before, but it seems to be maintaining the entire planet's environment. The temperature, the weather, even the oceans are all being controlled by some kind of artificial system. Soon, Ya looked up from her telescope. I have found something else, she said. The crystal buildings are not just random. They are arranged in patterns like a giant city that covers the entire planet, but there are no people anywhere. I can see gardens with fruit trees and what looks like farms, but no one is taking care of them. Taemin checked his weapons and equipment. Captain, if we go down there, we need to be ready for anything. Just because we cannot see any inhabitants does not mean they are not there. They could be hiding or sleeping or waiting for us to make the first move. Ari was still listening to the signals from the planet. The computer network is getting more active. She reported, it is like our presence here is causing something to wake up. The energy patterns are changing, and I'm starting to detect what might be automated systems coming online. Hyen Wu took a deep breath and made his decision. They had come too far to turn back now, and the planet below them might be humanity's only chance for survival. Prepare the landing shuttles, he ordered. We are going down to investigate. The crew began to move around the bridge, getting ready for the most important mission of their lives. None of them knew that they were about to make a discovery that would change the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. As they prepared to leave their ship, the planet below them continued to glow with its mysterious light, waiting for them to land and discover its secrets. The landing shuttle touched down on what looked like a perfect landing pad made of smooth white stone. The moment the engine stopped, Hyen Wu felt something strange. The air outside seemed to call to him, like it was inviting him to come out and explore. He had never felt anything like it before. Security Officer Taemin was the first to step outside the shuttle. His hand was ready on his weapon, but his mouth fell open when he saw what was around them. The landing pad was surrounded by the most beautiful garden he had ever seen. Flowers and colors that did not exist on Earth grew everywhere, filling the air with sweet smells that made him feel happy and relaxed. This place is incredible, he said, looking around in wonder. The buildings are like nothing we have ever seen, but somehow they feel familiar. It is like coming home to a place you have never been before. The crystal buildings that Dr. Sunya had seen from space were even more amazing up close. They seemed to be made of a material that was part crystal, part metal, and part something else that none of them could identify. The buildings glowed with a soft inner light that was warm and welcoming as the humans walked closer to them. Pathways made of the same glowing material lit up under their feet. It is like the planet is welcoming us, Commander Yunji said, as she watched the pathways light up. The technology here is responding to our presence, but it does not feel threatening. It feels like it is trying to help us. Communication specialist Nari was checking her equipment, but she kept getting distracted by the beauty around them. Captain, I am picking up energy signatures from these buildings, but they are not dangerous. The power levels are stable, and the technology seems to be designed to make life easier for whoever lives here. As they walked deeper into what was clearly a city, they discovered that the buildings were not just beautiful, they were also functional. The first building they entered had rooms that seemed to be designed perfectly for humans. There were chairs that were exactly the right size for human bodies, tables that were at the perfect height, and windows that gave amazing views of the gardens outside. Look at this, Jinho called out from what appeared to be a kitchen. The appliances here are responding to my presence. When I walked up to this device, it started glowing and showing me symbols. I think it is trying to teach me how to use it. Dr. Sunya was documenting everything with her camera, but her scientific mind was troubled by what she was seeing. This should not be possible, she said. The chance of finding technology that is perfectly designed for humans on an alien planet is basically zero. There has to be an explanation for this, but the crew was already falling in love with their new surroundings. The planet seemed to know exactly what they needed before they even knew it themselves. When Jinho felt thirsty, he found a fountain of the clearest water he had ever tasted. When Taemin felt tired, he discovered a room with beds that seemed to adjust to his body perfectly. When Nari felt hungry, she found trees growing fruit that looked exactly like apples but tasted even better. The fruit glows from the inside. Yoonji observed as she bit into one. It tastes perfect, like someone designed it specifically for human taste buds. The nutrition levels are exactly what our bodies need. As they explored more of the city, they found gardens full of vegetables that looked like earth crops but were somehow better, tomatoes that were perfectly ripe and sweet, corn that was golden and full of flavor, wheat that seemed to grow in perfect rows without any weeds or pests. The agricultural systems here are completely automated, Sunya noted, but they are producing food that is ideal for human consumption. The soil composition is perfect, the water system is flawless, and the climate control maintains ideal growing conditions. When night began to fall, the planet revealed another wonder, the sky filled with gentle lights that were not quite stars, but created patterns that were both alien and somehow comforting. The lights seemed to pulse in rhythm with the crew's heartbeats, making them feel safe and at home. The crew set up camp in one of the larger buildings, which seemed to have been designed as some kind of community center. There were sleeping areas, a large kitchen, and even entertainment spaces with devices that projected beautiful images and played soothing music. "This is too perfect," Captain Taemin said as he checked the security systems he had set up. "Everything about this place seems designed to make humans happy and comfortable. It is like someone studied our species for years and built this world just for USNRE." Was trying to contact their ship in orbit, but she was having trouble getting a clear signal. "The planet's energy field is interfering with our communications," she reported, "but it does not seem to be blocking them on purpose. It is more like the technology here is so advanced that it is overwhelming our equipment." Wu walked out onto a balcony that overlooked the city below him. He could see the crystal buildings stretching as far as the eye could see, all of them glowing with that same warm light. In the distance, he could see forests and mountains and oceans, all of them perfectly beautiful and welcoming. "We need to be careful," he said to his crew. "This place is amazing, but we still do not know what happened to the people who built it. A civilization advanced enough to create all this does not just disappear without a reason." But even as he said the words, Hyeon Woo felt the planet's peaceful influence affecting him. The air was so clean and sweet, the temperature was exactly right, and everything around them seemed designed to make them feel happy and safe. It was hard to imagine that anything bad could happen in such a perfect place. Jinho had been exploring the building's technical systems, and he made an interesting discovery. "Captain, the building's computer system is learning from us. Every time we interact with something, it records our preferences and adjusts itself to make us more comfortable. It is like the entire planet is one giant artificial intelligence designed to serve whoever lives here. The technology is definitely still active," Yoonji added. "The power grid extends across the entire planet, and it is all connected. The buildings, the environmental systems, the food production, everything is part of one massive network." Sunya was studying biological samples from the plants and animals around them. "The ecosystem here is completely balanced," she reported. "Every species serves a purpose and nothing is harmful to humans. The predators are all small and harmless, the plants are all beneficial, and even the insects seem designed to help with pollination and waste management." As the crew settled in for their first night on the planet, they felt a sense of peace and contentment that none of them had experienced before. The beds were perfectly comfortable, the air was perfectly clean, and the gentle lights in the sky seemed to sing them to sleep. None of them noticed the subtle changes that were beginning to occur around them. The crystal buildings were glowing slightly brighter, the energy readings were slowly increasing, and deep beneath the surface of the planet, ancient systems were beginning to wake up after millions of years of dormancy. The planet had been waiting for them, and now that they were here, the final phase of a plan that had been set in motion long ago was about to begin. 3 days had passed since the crew of the Korean Dawn had landed on the Paradise planet, and things were starting to change in ways that made Dr. Sunya very nervous. She had been taking measurements every few hours, and the numbers were getting stranger each time. "Captain Hyun-woo," she called out during their morning meeting, The planet is not just responding to us anymore, it is actually changing itself. The trees around our camp have grown almost twice as tall overnight. The fruit production has increased by 300%, and I am detecting new plant species that were not here yesterday. Hyunwoo looked at the data on her computer screen and felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of changes are we talking about, Sunya? Are we in danger? I do not know yet, she replied honestly, but the ecosystem is shifting at an impossible rate. It is like the planet is trying to become even more perfect for us, but I do not understand. We communication specialist Nari had been monitoring the planet's technology systems, and she had noticed something disturbing. The communication arrays throughout the city had become much more active over the past day. They were sending out signals toward the stars, signals that were getting stronger. Every hour, Captain, I am detecting transmissions being sent from the planet, she reported, but they are not coming from us. The planetary computer system is broadcasting something into deep space, and the signals are getting more powerful. What kind of signals? Hyunwoo asked. I cannot decode them yet, but they seem to be some kind of activation codes or wake-up calls. The pattern suggests they are being sent to specific locations in space, like the planet is trying to contact something or someone. Engineer Jin-ho had been exploring the deeper levels of the city, and he had made a discovery that frightened him more than anything he had ever seen. Captain, I found something in the lower chambers of the main building. It looks like a control room, but the technology there is beyond anything we understand. Show me, Hyunwoo ordered, and the crew followed Jin-ho down into the depths of the crystal building. Control room was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were covered with what looked like living circuits that pulsed with light and seemed to move on their own. In the center of the room stood a massive device that was part computer, part organic growth, and part something else entirely. The device was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The symbols were not carved into the surface, they were actually floating just above it, and they glowed with the same warm light as the rest of the planet. The symbols, Nari gasped as she studied the patterns. They are not random, Captain. They are forming sequences like some kind of countdown or activation sequence, and they are responding to our presence. The more we watch them, the faster they move. As if it had heard her words, the device suddenly came to life with a flash of brilliant light that filled the entire room. The symbols stopped shifting and arranged themselves into clear patterns that somehow the crew found they could understand. The message appeared in their minds rather than their eyes, and it was both welcoming and terrifying. WELCOME Inheritors. The final phase begins. Paradise Protocol activated. Dimensional barriers weakening the harvest. APPROACHESDR. Sunya felt her blood turn to ice. Inheritors, what does that mean, and what is this harvest it is talking about? Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The vibrations were not violent, but they were constant, and they seemed to be coming from deep within the planet. Outside, they could hear a low humming sound that was growing louder. We need to get back to the surface, Hyunwoo ordered, but as they climbed the stairs, they could see that the world above them was changing. The sky was no longer the pleasant blue they had come to love. Instead, it was shifting to deeper colors that seemed to pulse with energy. The gentle lights that had seemed so welcoming now flashed with urgent intensity, and in the distance, they could see similar beacons activating all across the planet. Taemin was checking his weapons, but he knew they would be useless against whatever was happening. Captain, the entire planet is lighting up like some kind of massive beacon. The energy readings are off the charts, and I am detecting movement in the upper atmosphere. Nari was frantically trying to contact their ship in orbit, but all she could get was static. Captain, I cannot reach the Korean Dawn. Something is blocking our communications, but I am detecting massive energy buildups all across the planet's surface. The crystal buildings throughout the city were now blazing with light so bright that it hurt to look at them directly. The peaceful gardens had become wild and overgrown with plants that seemed to pulse with their own inner fire. The fountains were glowing, and the water itself seemed to be made of liquid light. What have we done? Jin-ho whispered as he watched the transformation taking place around them. That was when they saw the first crack in the sky. It appeared directly overhead, a thin line of absolute darkness that seemed to cut through reality itself. Through the crack they could see glimpses of another world, a place that was the complete opposite of the paradise they had found. The other world was dark and twisted, filled with shadows that moved with purpose and hunger. The crew could see shapes moving in that darkness, creatures that seemed to be made of pure malevolence and destruction. More cracks began to appear across the sky, each one revealing more of the dark world beyond. The Paradise Planet was somehow opening doorways to another dimension, and whatever lived in that other place was trying to break through. Dr. Sunya was taking readings of the dimensional rifts, and what she found made her feel sick. The barriers between our dimension and theirs are breaking down, she reported. Whatever this planet was really designed to do, it is working. The Paradise was just the first phase. The device in the control room was now sending out pulses of energy that could be felt throughout the entire planet. Each pulse made the cracks in the sky grow larger, and the shapes in the darkness beyond became clearer and more threatening. We have to get back to the ship, Hyun Woo ordered, but when they reached their landing shuttle, they found that it would not start. The planet's energy field was interfering with all their technology, trapping them on the surface. Captain Neri called out, her voice filled with terror. Look at the sky above them. The largest crack yet was opening, and through it they could see something that made their blood freeze. A massive creature made of living shadow was pressing against the dimensional barrier. Trying to break through. Its form was impossible to describe, but its hunger and hatred were obvious. The creature was not alone. Behind it they could see dozens more waiting for their chance to enter the normal universe. These were not just aliens, they were something far worse. They were beings that existed only to consume and destroy everything they encountered. The Paradise Planet had not been a gift, it had been a trap, and the crew of the Korean Dawn had walked right into it. As the first of the shadow creatures began to push through the weakening barrier, the crew realized that they had not just found a new world, they had accidentally triggered the end of everything. The device in the control room pulsed again, and this time the message was different. DIMENSIONAL. Locks disengaged, final barrier failing, dark ones approaching. Choose your fate, INHAITOS. The crew looked at each other, knowing that whatever choice they made next would determine not just their own fate, but the fate of their entire species. In the sky above them, reality itself was tearing apart, and through the tears came beings of pure darkness and hunger. The paradise had become a nightmare, and there was nowhere left to run. The tears in the sky had grown so large that they could see clearly into the dark dimension beyond. What they saw there made their worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. The other world was a place of pure chaos and destruction, where creatures made of living shadow moved with deadly purpose. Captain Hyun Woo watched in horror as more and more of the dark beings pressed against the weakening barriers between dimensions. Some of them were already starting to push through, their forms becoming more solid as they entered the normal universe. We have to get back to the ship, he commanded. But as they ran toward their shuttle, they found something that made their situation even worse. The shuttle was dead, its engines would not start, and all the control systems were dark. The planet's energy field was not just interfering with their technology, it was completely shutting it down. We are trapped here, Jinho said as he tried desperately to get the engines working. The planet will not let us leave. It wants us to stay here for some reason. That was when they encountered the first guardian. The being appeared from the crystal structures like a ghost, becoming solid, a tall and graceful figure that seemed to be made of the same glowing material as the buildings. Its features were both alien and strangely familiar, and when it spoke, its voice came directly into their minds. Do not fear, humans, it said in a voice that was both sad and ancient. You have done exactly what you were meant to do. Your species was chosen long ago, selected for this moment when you would find your way to this world and activate the final protocol. Dr. Sunya stepped forward, her scientific curiosity stronger than her fear. Who are you? What is this place? Really, and why did you choose UCM, the keeper of the threshold? The being replied, I am the last of my kind. The others died long ago when we built this world as both a trap and a test. For millions of years, we have waited for a species capable of triggering the dimensional locks that keep the Dark Ones imprisoned. The revelation hit the crew like a physical blow. Engineer Jinho was the first to find his voice. You're saying we are bait, that this whole paradise was just a trap to lure US here not bait, the Guardian corrected. Keys, your species possesses something that is very rare in the universe, a combination of curiosity, adaptability, and determination that makes you perfect for this task. Only beings who would willingly enter Paradise and touch the forbiddens could activate the ancient mechanism. Security Officer Taemin raised his weapon even though he knew it would probably be useless against the ethereal being. What happens to us now? What happens to our people back on Earth? That depends on your choice, the Guardian replied. The barriers between dimensions are weakening with each passing moment. Soon the Dark Ones will break through completely, but you have the power to stop them if you are willing to pay the Prisonerie was studying her instruments frantically. Captain, I am detecting massive energy signatures approaching from those tiers in space. Whatever these Dark Ones are, they are coming in large numbers through the dimensional rifts. They could see them more clearly now. The Dark Ones were creatures of pure malevolence, beings that seemed to exist only to consume and destroy everything they touched. They had been imprisoned for countless ages, waiting for the chance to break free and devour the universe. Why us? Captain Hyan-Woo demanded. Why could you not do this yourselves? Because we built the prison, the Guardian explained sadly. We cannot be the ones to open it, even to create better defenses. The laws of the universe prevent the creators of a dimensional lock from modifying it. It had to be another species, one that would choose to activate the system voluntarily. The Guardian's form flickered as more energy poured through the dimensional barriers. Your people's arrival here was not by chance, it was destiny. The Paradise Planet was designed to attract species like yours, curious beings who would explore and investigate rather than simply conquer. Dr. Sunya was beginning to understand the terrible logic behind it all. You needed a species that would be tempted by perfection, a species that would touch the Forbidden's technology out of curiosity rather than fear. Exactly, the Guardian replied, and now you must choose. You can try to reverse the process and likely fail, dooming your world to eventual destruction when the Dark Ones break free on their own. Or you can complete the activation and become the new guardians of the dimensional barrier. What does that mean? Jinho asked. It means you would gain the power to protect both your civilization and ours, the Guardian explained, but you would also be bound to this world forever. You would become part of the planetary defense system, immortal, but no longer fully human. The first of the Dark Ones had managed to push through the barrier completely. Its form was indescribable, a writhing mass of shadow and hunger that seemed to bend reality around it. Where it touched the crystal buildings, they began to corrupt and decay. Look what it does to everything it touches, Sunya whispered in horror. The Dark Ones consume more than just matter and energy, the Guardian explained. They devour the very concept of existence itself, turning order into chaos and hope into despair. They have destroyed countless civilizations across the galaxy. More of the creatures were breaking through now, and the crew could see the effect they had on the Paradise Planet. The beautiful gardens withered and died at their touch, the crystal buildings cracked and darkened, and the very air seemed to become harder to breathe. Ari was monitoring communications from space. Captain, I am picking up signals from other ships. Multiple vessels are approaching our position from different directions. It looks like a whole fleet is coming. The Guardians' form brightened with what might have been hope. The other races, they have felt the dimensional disturbance. They are coming to help fight the Dark Ones, but conventional weapons cannot harm these creatures. Then how do we stop them? Taemin asked. The Guardian looked at each member of the crew with its ancient eyes. The Dark Ones can only be defeated by something they cannot understand or corrupt. They are beings of pure selfishness and hunger. They literally cannot comprehend genuine sacrifice or selfless love. You mean we have to die to stop them? Hyan-Woo said quietly. Not necessarily, the Guardian replied. But you must be willing to give up your individual existence to become part of something greater. The planetary defense system requires conscious minds to guide it, minds that choose to protect others rather than themselves. The crew looked at each other, realizing the terrible choice they faced. They could try to escape and probably fail, leaving the universe defenseless against the Dark Ones, or they could sacrifice their humanity to become eternal guardians. But even as they considered their options, more Dark Ones were breaking through the dimensional barriers. The Paradise Planet was quickly becoming a nightmare world of shadow and corruption. We need to decide quickly, the Guardian urged. The barriers are failing faster than we anticipated. Once too many Dark Ones break through, they will be impossible to stop. Jinho was studying the control systems, trying to understand how they worked. Captain, what if there is another way? What if we do not have to choose between escaping and sacrificing ourselves? What do you mean? Han Wu asked. The energy pattern suggests that the system is designed to be modified, he explained. If we can understand how it works, maybe we can find a way to stop the Dark Ones without losing ourselves. The Guardian looked surprised. That possibility was not considered by my people. The system has remained unchanged for millions of years, but we are not your people, Sun Ya said with growing determination. We are human. We find solutions that others cannot see above them. The sky was now more tiers than normal space. The Dark Ones were pouring through in increasing numbers, their forms becoming more solid and threatening with each passing moment. The crew of the Korean Dawn stood at the center of a cosmic battle that would determine the fate of not just their own world, but the entire universe. The choice they made in the next few minutes would echo through eternity, and time was running out. The sky above them had become a battlefield between light and darkness. The crystal structures across the planet pulsed with desperate energy, trying to hold back the tide of shadow creatures that pressed against the dimensional barriers. Captain Han Wu could see that they were losing the battle. The Guardian stood beside them, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. How long do we have? He asked. Minutes, perhaps less, the Guardian replied. The Dark Ones have been feeding on the energy we have been using to maintain the barriers. Each moment of delay makes them stronger and us weaker. Dr. Sunya was frantically studying the readings from her instruments. Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand what this planet really is. The entire world is a massive machine designed to channel and amplify psychic energy. The previous inhabitants built it as a last resort, knowing they might need to sacrifice themselves to save the universe. And now it is our turn, Nari said quietly, her communication equipment finally picking up signals from their ship in orbit. Captain, I am getting transmissions from the Korean Dawn. They are asking for status updates, but they have no idea what is happening down here. Security Officer Taemin had been watching the approaching shadow creatures with the soldiers trained. These things are not just destroyers, he observed. They are hunters. They have been waiting for us to open the door so they could track our species back to Earth. The Guardian nodded gravely. The Dark Ones consume worlds by following the psychic trails left by spacefaring species. If they escape this prison, they will find your homeworld within days. Your entire civilization will be devoured along with countless others. Engineer Jinho was still examining the control systems, his technical mind racing through possibilities. There might be another way, he said suddenly. What if we do not complete the activation, but we do not stop it either? What if we modify the system to do something different? Explain, Captain Han Wu ordered. Look at these energy patterns. Jinho pointed to his readings. The planet is not just opening a gateway, it is preparing to become a fortress. The original plan was to create guardians to protect the gateway, but what if we turn the entire planet into a weapon instead, use its power to destroy the Dark Ones rather than just contain them? The Guardian's form flickered with something that might have been surprised. That approach was never considered by my people. The energy requirements would be enormous. It would require the willing sacrifice of those who activate it. But in a different way. How many people would have to die? Sunya asked. Not die exactly, the Guardian replied, but cease to exist as individuals. Your life force would become part of the planet's consciousness. You would become immortal guardians, but at the cost of your humanity. You would exist forever, but never again as separate beings. The crew exchanged glances. They had signed up for exploration and discovery, not martyrdom. But as they watched the Dark Ones pressing closer to breakthrough, they realized they might not have a choice. Wait. Nari suddenly called out, I am detecting something else. Energy signatures from space. Multiple ships approaching our position. On her scanner they could see them, dozens of vessels from different star systems, all converging on their location. The Guardian's form brightened with what might have been hope. The Alliance fleets, the Guardian said. They felt the dimensional disturbance. They are coming to help, but they do not understand what they are truly facing. First ships were already engaging the Dark Ones that had broken through into normal space, but their weapons seemed to have little effect on the shadow creatures. In fact, the energy from the weapons seemed to make the Dark Ones stronger. Jinho was monitoring the battle from his instruments. Captain, the conventional weapons are not working. The dark ones are absorbing the energy from the laser cannons and plasma torpedoes. They are actually growing larger and more powerful, but they are still afraid of something. Taemin noted, studying their movement patterns. They are avoiding the crystal structures. Staying away from the planet's core. There's something about this place that they do not want to get too close to, the Guardian explained. The planetary defense system creates a field that weakens them, but only at close range. The farther they get from the planet, the stronger they become. That is why they must be stopped here and now. Dr. Sunya was watching the energy readings from the planet's core. I think I understand now, she said. The Dark Ones are not just creatures, they are the opposite of creation itself. They exist to turn order into chaos, hope into despair, but they cannot corrupt something that is freely given. What do you mean? Hyan Wu asked. The system requires a conscious choice, not just sacrifice, but genuine willingness to save others. The Dark Ones are pure selfishness. They literally cannot understand or defend against an act of true selflessness. The Guardian's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, that is why it had to be another species we were too connected to. Our own survival too, invested in our own continuation. It needed beings who would choose to save strangers over themselves. Nari was monitoring communications from the fleet captain. The other ships are asking for orders they are willing to follow our lead, but they need to know what we are planning. Their weapons are not working, and they are starting to take casualties more. Dark Ones were breaking through the barriers now, and the Allied fleet was being pushed back. The shadow creatures were growing bolder and stronger with each passing moment. Soon they would be powerful enough to leave the planet and spread across the galaxy. The crew of the Korean Dawn stood at the center of it all, knowing that their decision would determine the fate of countless worlds. They had traveled farther from home than any humans before them. They had found paradise, discovered it was a trap, and now faced a choice that would echo through eternity. Captain Hyan Wu looked at his crew, 5 humans who had become like family to him. Jin Ho, the brilliant engineer who could solve any technical problem. Eunji, the wise commander who understood alien sciences. Sunya, the careful scientist who studied every detail. Taemin, the loyal soldier who would protect them all. Nari, the young communicator who could talk to anyone. They were just 5 people, but they held the fate of the universe in their hands. We are not sacrificing ourselves, he decided suddenly. We are going to show these Dark Ones what humanity is really capable of. What do you mean? Jinho Eskedunwu smiled grimly. We are going to do something they cannot understand or corrupt. We are going to unite everyone working together. The crew began to modify the planet's systems. Instead of channeling their life force into the defense grid, they decided to use their uniquely human ability to inspire cooperation. They would broadcast their story, their choice, and their determination to save not just their own world, but all worlds. The Guardian watched in amazement as the humans began to implement their plan. No species had ever attempted such a thing before. The Dark Ones pressed closer, sensing that something was changing, but they could not understand what the humans were planning. They were creatures of pure hunger and malice, incapable of comprehending the concept of willing sacrifice for strangers. As the crew prepared to transmit their message to the Allied fleet, the dimensional barriers continued to weaken. More shadow creatures poured through the tiers in space, their forms becoming more solid and threatening with each passing moment. The final battle for the universe was about to begin, and 5 humans from Earth were about to attempt something that had never been tried before in the history of the galaxy. They were going to try to save everyone. The battle above them was unlike anything the crew had ever imagined. The Allied fleet ships from dozens of different worlds were fighting desperately against the Dark Ones, but their weapons were useless against creatures made of living shadow. Every energy blast, every missile, every beam weapon only made the shadow creatures stronger. Captain Hyan Wu watched the tactical display with growing understanding. We have been thinking about this wrong. He realized the Dark Ones are not just attacking. They are feeding. Every time the Allied ships fire at them, they grow more powerful. Dr. Sunya was studying the energy patterns from her instruments. Captain, look at the readings. The Dark Ones are not just creatures, they are like living black holes. For positive energy, they consume hope, courage, and determination itself. But They are still avoiding something, Security Officer Taman observed. The shadow creatures were staying away from the planet's core, and they seemed afraid of the crystal. Structures that glowed with warm light. Engineer Jinho was deep in the control systems, his mind working faster than it ever had before. I understand now, he announced. The previous inhabitants did not build this place as a weapon or a prison. They built it as a test. The Dark Ones can only be defeated by something they cannot understand or corrupt. What do you mean, communication specialist? Nari asked. Genuine selflessness, Jinho explained. The system requires beings to make a conscious choice. Not just to sacrifice themselves, but to genuinely choose to save others over themselves. The Dark Ones are pure selfishness, pure hunger. They literally cannot comprehend or defend against an act of true love. The Guardian's form pulsed with excitement. Yes, that is exactly right. That is why it had to be another species. We were too connected to our own survival, too invested in our own world. It needed beings who would choose to save strangers over themselves. Nari was monitoring communications from the fleet. Captain, the other ships are requesting orders. They are willing to follow our lead, but they need to know what we are planning. Their losses are mounting, and they cannot hold out much longer. Yan Wu looked at his crew, 5 humans, who had traveled farther from home than any of their species before them. They had found paradise, discovered it was a trap, and now faced a choice that would determine the fate of multiple civilizations. We are not sacrificing ourselves, he decided. We are going to show these Dark Ones what humanity is really capable of. We are going to unite everyone working together. The crew began to modify the planet's systems. Instead of channeling their life force into the defense grid, they would use their unique human ability to inspire cooperation. They would broadcast their story, their discovery, their choice, and their determination to save not just their own world, but all worlds. The plan was simple but revolutionary. They would transmit their experience to every ship in the fleet, sharing not just information, but their emotions, their hopes, and their willingness to fight for people they had never met. The goal was to create something the Dark Ones had never encountered before, a truly united force, driven by genuine care for others. Jinho worked frantically to modify the communication systems while Nari prepared to broadcast their message to the entire fleet. Sunya documented their story to make sure every detail was preserved, and Taman coordinated with the military commanders. The Guardian watched in amazement. No species has ever attempted such a thing before, it said. The Dark Ones have faced countless civilizations over millions of years, but they have never encountered true unity between different species. As the crew prepared their broadcast, the Dark Ones seemed to sense that something was changing. The shadow creatures began to press more aggressively against the barriers, their forms becoming more solid and threatening. But they still could not understand what the humans were planning. The transmission began with Yan Wu's voice reaching every ship in the fleet. This is Captain Yan Wu of the human exploration vessel Korean Dawn. We are 5 people who left our homeworld to find a new place for our species to live. What we found instead was a choice that belongs to all of us. The message continued with each crew member adding their part. Jinho explained the technical aspects of what they had learned. Yunji shared the scientific implications. Sunya described the Dark Ones and their nature. Taemin outlined the military situation, and Nari coordinated the response from the fleet. But the most important part of the message was not the information, it was the emotion behind it. The crew shared their genuine desire to protect not just their own people, but all the civilizations represented in the fleet. They offered to sacrifice themselves if necessary, but asked the others to work together in a way that had never been attempted before. The response was immediate. Crews from dozens of different species, many of whom had never met humans before, began to coordinate their efforts. They shared technology, combined their weapons, and worked together with a level of cooperation that the galaxy had never seen it. Dark Ones, faced with this unprecedented display of interspecies unity, found themselves unable to adapt. Their nature as pure consumers of hope and determination left them helpless against beings who willingly gave of themselves to protect others. The shadow creatures began to weaken as the unified fleet focused their combined energy not on destroying the Dark Ones, but on reinforcing the barriers between dimensions. Instead of feeding the creatures with aggressive attacks, they starved them by creating something the Dark Ones could not consume. Selfless cooperation. One by one, the Dark Ones began to fade back into their prison dimension. The tears in space started to heal, and the dimensional barriers grew stronger than they had been in millions of years. The planet's crystal structures glowed brighter than ever before, but now they served a different purpose instead of a trap or a weapon. The Paradise Planet became a meeting place where different species could come together and learn from each other. The Guardians people had built it as a last resort. But humanity had turned it into something better, a symbol of what could be achieved when different civilizations worked together. The Allied fleet commanders contacted the Korean Dawn, directly Captain Hyun-woo. They said, "You and your crew have not just saved our worlds, you have created something new. You have proven that cooperation is more powerful than any weapon." Crew was offered the chance to become permanent ambassadors to help build the new alliance between species, but they chose instead to return to Earth. With their incredible story, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. As the Korean Dawn prepared for its journey home, the crew looked back at the Paradise Planet one last time. It was no longer a perfect world designed to trap unwary explorers. Instead, it had become something better, a place where different species could meet and learn from each other. The Dark Ones were not destroyed, they were still imprisoned in their dimension.